Hello, my name is Vinicius, a certified Bubble developer. So today I'll be talking about how to return data from backend workflow using Bubble app connector and not the API connector. So we have API connector and Bubble app connector. So if you go to add plugins, you can easily type on app and you see the Bubble app connector. So here we will be testing it with forget password because under normal circumstances we are supposed to check if this email that we want to request for forgot password actually have signed up in the app. So under normal circumstances, if you go to forgot password and just type any email, irrespective of whether the account exists or not, the workflow will run, but you will not get an email because if you are not signed up in the account. And we cannot do a search for users in the forget email. We cannot do make changes and then do a search for users. This will entail us exposing the user to everyone else. So it's a security risk. So now the best way to do it is to run the workflow in the backend, return the answer in the front end, and then display. If the user exists, the workflow goes. If the user doesn't exist, you allow the user that, oh, this email you just entered doesn't exist in the database. So let's get on to it. So first thing we do is to go to our backend workflow. So here we have our backend workflow. We create a new backend workflow called, let's call it check user. So for us to return anything from the backend, we have to expose this API, expose it, and then we are going to ignore privacy rule to be able to search because this user is not logged in. They just want to reset their email path. Then we are going to pass a parameter called email. So this email, we do a search. We are going to make changes. Then do a search for users whose email is equal to this email, first item. Yeah. So what do we want to return? We're going to return a yes or no field, user exists. Then I can just name it user exists and then name it yes, no. So if correct result of step 1 is not empty, it means this user exists, the workflow will run. If result of step 1 is empty, it means that this user does not exist. So which means we cannot send a recovery email to them. So the next thing we do is to go to our app connector. So we have API connector and we have our app connector. So to set up your app connector, you have to put your domain name of the app you are building and it automatically bring out the app name. Then you can add a new API and you can see all the APIs that are exposed to the front end too. So if you go over here, any API that we expose to public workflow will be seen through the app connector. So we want to run this particular one, check user. You can make it to be a data. If you want to run it as a data, it means you will run it in the front end, where you run it through a group or a repeating group. So here we are going to do it as action, so because we want to work it through a workflow. Then you can secure this particular process, whereby it will not, by not clicking on this, it will not pass through if there is no authentication. So to create an authentication, we go to settings, go to API, then we are going to generate an API token. We're going to call this token test, which will only be used for this test purpose. You copy the API token, go back to your app connector, paste it in your API key. So it will pass this token anytime it wants to run these workflows. So the next step is to set up the workflow for the reset password. So here, when you click on reset password, what happens? You are going to run the workflow. So since we are using the app connector, you are going to find the name of the app. You can see run Hearland Clinic, which is the name of the app. So if we click on this, you can see the parameter that we passed through here, which is this parameter, email. And this email will be this input for email. So if we pass this parameter value. So because we are returning data, we can return this data here. So if this result of step 1 is user exists is yes, send this. If the user is no, we can send our customized alert. Because I have a usable element that I have customized alert inside. So we can write an arbitrary test. This email does exist in the database. So we are going to have error, and let's say 3000, and to be on the top. So this alert will show if the user exists is no, which means this user does not exist. So this is just a very simple process, and with that we have set this up. So if you go to the app and try to forget our password, say I forget the password. If I go to this app, in the user, we have only 3 users. So if I click here, let's say I click on this user and put this email, remove this one, press reset password, you can see this email does not exist in the database, right? So now we can put another workflow to show that the alert have gone. So if I copy this and paste this, and then say when the user is yes, you can say success message. So we want an alert for when the message have gone successfully, when the reset password have been sent. So here, so you have reset email sent success. Yeah, so this will only work when the user exists. So if I come over here and refresh, so if I add the user that exists and reset the password, you can see reset email sent successfully. So if I put an email that doesn't exist, it will run the same workflow and say this email does not exist in the database. And if I check my email, you can see that I got a reset email. So clicking on this will take us to where we're going to reset our email. So the message was actually sent successfully. So one of the good thing about using the Bubble App Connector is if I add a new field here, let's say name, I want to recover the user's name, and I go over here, do reset of step 1 first name. You will see that all I need to do is go to the app connector itself and refresh. But if we are doing this using the API connector, we have to reinitialize the call anytime we add a new field. But in this instance, we just need to refresh. And if I go over here and say current user's name, it will now add it to the description. So if I go over here, can see it have already added. If I go over here and add a user, it can now return both the email. If I add this email, press reset password, you can see the name of this email is text, right? So you can add new fields. So the only downside I can say for this Bubble App Connector is you cannot use Bubble App Connector in a branch. So if you create a branch, you will not be able to connect the app connector. So you have to connect it from the main branch itself and then migrate it to any other branches you created. So that is my take points about this, and I hope you learned a lot from this small tutorial. Thank you very much. Benny out.